Ladies and gents, the Disc Priest, our final look at the Priest in total. And what a wonderful way to go out, because Disc Priest has gone through some strange changes. Disc Priest always reminds me of a beast that Blizzard let out of its cage, and now it just can't get it back in. It gave this spec such a niche that it created quite a bizarre community. You obviously have people who are strictly dedicated to their Priest mains and want their raid spot, and if Disc is more powerful, they will go Disc. If Holy is more powerful, they will go Holy. And often I've found over the history of WoW when I've been in various guilds is that Disc Priests are generally unhappy with being Disc Priests, and then some of them have kind of adopted it as, because I've played it so long, that's the spec I'm going to be. But due to its power, it's also attracted quite a lot of people who play the spec purely to guarantee a raid spot, whether or not they're good at it or not, because of its actual power. So in Mists of Pandaria, we had the enormous problem of most healers complaining that Disc was so fucking powerful that it was actually reducing the number of healers needed in raid, which is never good. It's never good to see one class, one spec, absolutely dominating everything, and therefore the rest of the healers feel weak and just trying to pick up after their scraps while they just go ahead and just dominate everything else. So Blizzard decided to take a heavy hand with Disc in Warlords of Draenor. They decided that the power of absorbs needed to be crushed, essentially. It's the only word that really describes it. Crushed into the ground. Get rid of it. It's too powerful. We can't just give it to other healers. This is just it's too much of a niche that only one spec is filling, so we need to hammer it into the ground. They've successfully done that. They have successfully done that in terms of, especially raid-wide absorbs. Beyond Power Word Shield, you're not really going to put out excessive amounts of raid-wide absorbs. So this brings me on to the topic that most of you will have seen, which is Holy Nova spam. With Prayer of Healing being garbage now due to being too expensive and doing too little, yes, you barely ever cast it, it has fallen onto the Holy Nova to be spammed. Yes, spamming the Holy Nova. Should your raid be grouped where possible and grouped properly, Holy Nova is absolutely fantastic. Some of you will rejoice at that. Some of you will think that is ridiculous to spam away on the Holy Nova button over and over again. But that is what is happening right now, and it's looking like it's going to launch in that fashion. So do you want to AoE heal and you have your raid nicely grouped, you're going to be stood in there spamming Holy Nova like nobody's business, and you will see nicely your name appearing on the healing meters, which is what most people want to see, who love Disc. There are those out there, don't let me say the community is 50-50, it's by no means. There are some people who absolutely adore Discipline, and I do as well. I think it has a wonderful support class feature. It really is the only, in my opinion, truly support spec in the game. And my god, is it good at it. So after this happened and the absorbs were weakened quite significantly, Disc Priests were doing absolutely no healing at the start of the WoD beta. They were doing nothing. They were completely broken. You can check the previous video I did on Disc, and it was awful. We just couldn't get anything done. Going through a whole dungeon was nigh on impossible without a particularly good group. It just wasn't working whatsoever, which is sad state. So how have they fixed it? They haven't done much in the terms of AoE. They haven't done much in terms of that. So you'll see in the dungeon, and as always, guys, this is the worst dungeon I did. Of the many dungeons I do to do healers, this is the worst one I did, as it shows more of the reactionary stuff. In my opinion, it's better to see. Powered Shield is still very powerful. In situations where I knew, and this has always been exactly, again, the niche aspect of Disc, is that you are increasing players' health artificially, and therefore you need to be aware of what's about to happen. So you have bosses in this dungeon that I chose here that do things like burst. You'll see me throwing powered shields on everybody just before that. You'll see things like the spinning blades, putting powered shields on everybody before that. Similar sort of situation as you would expect to do from a good Disc Priest in Mists of Pandaria is damage is about to happen. Let me prepare the absorbs, otherwise I'm just firing out powered shields that won't get used. I'm wasting my time and mana doing anything else. So that's all very well and good, and going through a 5-man is very cool as Disc. I should point out that Atonement has been radically hammered. It might get a buff, I don't know. I'm guessing, but it feels like it needs a buff. It's no good. Even in 5-man normal modes, Atonement is just absolutely pathetic, and it makes the other niche aspects of Disc completely useless, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, but they have done the same with fist weaving for the monks as well. It seems like they really don't like the idea of DPS healers. They've added it to the game. Again, the beast they've let out the cage and can't put it away. And what they've seemed to have done is just made it, if there's nothing else to do, Sure, go ahead and do some DPS if you want to, but you're certainly not going to be putting out effective healing, and it's certainly not going to be the go-to like it is in Mists of Pandaria for AoE stuff. Right? That's not going to happen. It's far too weak. Maybe we'll see over the course of expansion with gear scaling that it will become much better, but as it stands right now, Atonement, I'm afraid, guys, if that's something you really liked about this, is pretty garbage. Gotta say, it's pretty bad. Now, this all sounds pretty doom and gloom. Is it? No! In typical Blizzard fashion, while making a class seem rather redundant in many aspects compared to its holy brother at least, they then thought they would give the Disc Priest the absolute god's gift to tank healing, and then gave them this enormous power that cannot be beaten. And this is just crazy, and that comes in the form of your level 100 talent, which is Clarity of Will. Clarity of Will is about as ridiculous as it gets. Clarity of Will is a straight-up absorb, no healing component whatsoever. It is spammable. It costs 5,000 mana, 2.5 second cast, so it's pretty good. And it absorbs at its base in the current gear 40,000 damage. Not too shabby when you consider people are running around with about 300k. And it stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks. And you can spam this indefinitely on a tank, and it costs you very little mana, so you can just keep it going. And nobody, and I mean nobody, can take that healing away from you. It is yours. You are now the god of tank healing. The absolute god of tank healing. In one of the dungeons I did, the tank was whispering me saying, what's happened to Dis? Because he never took damage. If he was tanking correctly, if you get a good tank who focuses the damage onto you, and only little bits of AoE cleave go elsewhere, you will notice that that tank stays at pretty much at 100% health all the time, and your job is essentially to keep refreshing this Clarity of Will buff. It lasts 20 seconds, and it would just keep stacking and stacking and stacking and stacking and stacking. I'm currently looking at the game now. I've done 5 casts, and I'm now absorbing 150,000 damage. That's a lot. And you can keep it going. And on top of that, you can stack your Power Word Shield, which will be absorbed first, which is really, really wonderful. Always the Power Word Shield gets taken away beforehand. Prayer of Mending after that. And your Clarity of Will still do its job. What a weird twist and a weird hammer to bring Dis straight back into the game. It's okay saying Holy Nova is great, but your raid is rarely that gathered in Warlords of Draenor unless it's a really constructed raid going for something very specific. So although Holy Nova spam works, you can't use it in many situations. Penance is still Penance, doing pretty well. And lovely the way it gives the Archangel stacks. Absolutely adore keeping that buff up. And then on top of that, you have this Clarity of Will. Now, the obvious issue with this Clarity of Will is it's super powerful, but it's also one of the biggest crutches you can ever imagine. Everything else seems superfluous compared to Clarity of Will. And Clarity of Will is certainly the rope that could hang the Disc Priest. If something changes with Clarity of Will, or it's just not a heavy tank healing fight, where does that leave Dis? I don't know. I don't know. For those of you who aren't playing Dis purely to guarantee yourself a raid spot, I can tell you now that role is probably gone, and other healers are equally as good at doing other things. But if you are someone who loves Dis, you're going to be relying so heavily on this spell to carry you. And that's all I can say about it, really, is everything else works as intended, but realistically, you are relying on spamming a spell on the tanks all the time to really, really see some unsnipeable, is the word I'd use, because sniping heals is a big factor in the healing meter game, and Clarity of Will cannot be sniped. Nobody can take it away from you. It exists. It is there. No heals will beat it. It will go in front of them. It is a flat-out absorb, increasing the effective health of that tank significantly. Wow. A pretty big crutch. How do you feel about that? I don't know. This has never been one of my favorites. It's okay. I prefer other healers. But is it too much? Is it too much of a crutch? Would you rather have it balanced around elsewhere? I know I would. I absolutely I know I would. It's okay to say things, well, you can have Spirit Shell in the talents, yeah, but it goes along with a Prayer of Healing, but Prayer of Healing's not very good anymore, so that aspect doesn't really work out. Pretty crazy. It's a weird place. It's almost as if they don't want Dis to be Dis. They don't want it to be about absorbs, but that's what it is, and this is how they've solved it. And I don't know. I'm 50-50 on whether I like it or not. It's very cool when it all works out and your group is permanently at 100% health. When they start taking damage, though, it does feel like you can fall behind very, very quickly, and then problems start. So, take it as you will. That is how the Dis will play in Warlords of Draenor, guys. Enjoy it or not, that's how it's going to be. Alright, guys. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.